Welcome to In Your Element, the podcast that unlocks practical wisdom in higher education, where leadership meets real talk. I'm Brendan Hinkle, Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Element 451.
And I'm Daniella Norden, Element 451's Director of Customer Success and Engagement. Join us every other Thursday for discussions with everyday heroes using Element 451 in enrollment, marketing, and student success. We'll unlock the practical tips to help you make waves on your campus.
In Your Element is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. All right, everybody, welcome back to In Your Element. This is 3 for 3, the third episode that we have in our Durham Tech series. So excited to welcome back Jessica Vaughan, Director of Enrollment Management and CRM Strategy, and Dr. Dones, who's the Vice President and Chief, very important, Chief Student Services Officer. Man, and here I thought I was going to nail it, get it right, and I stumbled on it.
Well, that's okay. You didn't mess it up as much as I did on the last episode, and I forgot like the chief part. It's like if you give someone a title that has global in it and you leave the global out, it's like the emphatic point of the title. It's like chief. You know?
It was too much pressure. There was too much pressure on me that I knew I couldn't
like
do
to
it.
Consider the emphatic point to be student services. How about that?
Wow.
Man, ever the diplomat, Dr.
I love
Dones. I love this. Well, if you all have been following the journey so far, we have covered how Durham Tech chose to partner with Element 451, and partner is really the important key there. The episode you want to listen to is choosing a partner, not a platform. A really great story about how Durham Tech really found Element and how Element really found Durham Tech and the success that we've had together. And then the prior episode was all about student success, how Durham Tech is using Element 451 to drive student success. And now this episode, we're going to wrap it up, put a nice little bow on it, and talk about results, right? Because that's what everybody's here for. The impact, the outcomes, what lessons y'all have learned, what data you're tracking, what feedback you've received over the last couple of years, and maybe also sharing some of the tangible ways that Element has really helped improve that student experience on campus. So I think all of us want to know about data. We all have questions about what works and what doesn't work. So we're excited to get this started. We're excited to hear what you all are doing. I'll ask the first question. We'll jump right in there. What key metrics are you tracking and how are you measuring the impact of Element? And let's start with student success because that was our previous one, but we can go broader than that. But let's start with that impact on student success.
I do want to put a disclaimer out there, Daniella. Simply because, one of the things that we're continuing to work on is the integration and evolution of the system at the college, right? And so it's very important for us to, yes, have data, but I also think it's important for us to lay the context of this conversation that we may be limited in how much data we can analyze right now because we're not in the full implementation of things and we're in some test phases of the early success system. So just putting that context out there for the listener to understand that there will come a time where we can give you all the data you want, but some of our data is limited in scope at this present time. And with that said, I'm going to pass it to Jessica.
Well, I think that's actually important to before you punt. It's important because I think some people don't even know really where to start. So even having a little bit of data or even piloting it or even having data iterating as you go. So that actually was a really important disclaimer.
Well, here's the thing. Don't minimize a little bit of data because the data we do have, it's a lot.
Oh.
It's a lot of information that we do have because it's a purview and insight to data that we may not have had before.
Yes.
For the implementation of where we are with the current system. So it is definitely a tool and a set of information that is going to continue to help us. I'm thinking long term, when there's a full integration and implementation of CRM early success systems and it's working as we intend it to be, how much more information we'll be pulling out of it.
And I'll add too, I think it's important for the listener to note that we implemented pretty wide span across the college, right? A lot of schools or institutions might have picked a more narrow focus in, implementing events or forms or campaigns or what have you. And we went pretty much all in what we took on. And so that said, it's harder to capture some of that data, but some of the areas that we are tracking data as it relates to student success is looking at what resources are most utilized by students. We are able to track the accountability of the student support areas and their response rate and the timing of their responses. Obviously we want quick responses to get these students the support that they need. We will look at retention once the pilot is over. We'll look at the retention data of our courses and how the differences between previous courses and this course that we implemented, the student pulse check and the faculty referral form. So those are some areas that we'll look at. And then from a student perspective, we're collecting feedback on the communication cadence of the early success system, making sure that we're not inundating these students with too much communication and that they're okay with us texting and emailing. So those are some areas that we kind of are capturing data from the student success side.
In what ways really has Element changed the way that you've been able to engage? And has the metrics and the data you've collected, has it allowed you to kind of shift in what your approach is from what you initially thought?
I think one of the ways that this process has forced us to reconsider how we communicate and the content of that communication to students. When you're thinking of a new platform and you're thinking of an opportunity to engage students at a higher level, what is the tone of your messaging? What is the content of that message? And so for us, we had to go back and look at the materials that we communicated prior and now make some adoptions and adaptations to that language and that content. One, because you have a different platform, which is the texting platform, and then you still have the option of communicating via email. What we wanted to make sure we were doing is that we were looking at this content and making sure that it was not only by the recipient, but digestible as well. There's so much information we are providing our students when we're trying to communicate with them that I believe at times we can over-communicate messaging and we can inundate an individual with too much information where guess what? They walk away from the message. They're not even looking at the content of the messaging anymore because you've overwhelmed them with too much information. So for us, it was how do we now utilize and leverage a system that can be organized in a way to be intentional of communications towards an individual, and it can be parsed out, it can be delayed in intervals, and it can be chunked into smaller topics and categories that allow for that content to be received well, to be understood, and that the individual student can take action upon it. And so I believe that was one of the biggest steps that we took forward, was reviewing our content and how we were communicating with students to begin with. So it's a helpful opportunity from an organizational perspective to really start thinking about more intentional communication towards students. I think the second piece is really trying to make sure that whatever we develop and create is not only well received, but that it makes sense for the student and it's timely and it's appropriate, and that we promote a wantingness of that student to engage and interact with us through that modality of communication at that moment. Jess, I don't know if you have another perspective to add.
I was going to say one of the things that struck me, I'll take the handoff for Jess, that when we were working together was how intentional y'all were about setting out the behaviors that you wanted students to take. So for student success, for example, when we were building out some of those workflows, like the team would say, hey, if a student comes in with this pathway, for example, and is assigned this person, then create this task. And it was more proactive, I feel like, than it was reactive. And before there was a shift that was like, oh, we know we need them to apply by this date, so we'll just send that message out to apply. But now it was a switch to to when the student does these things, regardless of time or date or place, we can still interact with them or support them or get them connected to that advisor or that person that they need to be connected to without waiting. So I think it sort of shifted from that reactive to proactive approach. And I may be taking a leap there, but I definitely saw that when we were building things out.
No, we would agree with you.
Yeah.
That's definitely the intent here. We no longer can sit idle and expect students to come to us. How are we pressing the matter? How are we lifting up the supports and services that we provide? How are we encouraging students to get connected? How are we promoting our tutoring services? How are we engaging students to say, hey, we have counseling available for you. We have this opportunity as it relates to financial assistance available to you, right? Our students come and go. They're transient students. If they have other priorities in life, they don't have time to just hang around on the college campus anymore and just, be with friends and try to engage with us. They're coming and going so quickly. And we just need to make sure that they are aware of what it is that we're doing, what we're offering, and how do we capitalize on that opportunity to make that connection from that need to that service.
Yeah, I think one of the other places I saw that in too was right at the beginning when we were implementing, well, it was BoltBot then, but now it's, Bolt Assistant and Bolt Agents. But thinking about the automated replies that you all had set up, where you were directing students to go when these queries came in and knowing what you wanted them to do. Oh, if they were interested in health and wellness, this was the route that they took, or this was where they went. Or if they were interested in, or if they were a current student, right, and needed help with something else, like building out those pathways for students to go. That was one of the earliest places I think I saw that mental shift happen on campus. All good stuff though, yeah. As you've been engaging and supporting these students, do you have some specific outcomes? How has retention been? How has engagement been since you implemented Element 451?
It is a fair question, but I want to do right and be judicious on providing a proper response, because Daniella, that's only one piece of the puzzle, right? Because we talked about this in the last podcast. The tool is wonderful, but if you don't have the people behind the tool to then follow up, where there's engagement that's needed with a student and a person, then the tool is not as effective as we would like it to be. And so to your question, and to be very fair, we have done a lot of work here at the college to improve how we serve and support our students. One of them is the integration of Element 451 through a CRM and our early successes. Other things that we've adopted and improved upon and have changed over time is we've adopted a framework for success coaching at the college. So that's another piece of the puzzle here, right? Because now we have our success coaches utilizing Element 451, not only to engage and communicate with students, but also to follow up with them when a referral form comes through, soliciting some type of need, right? And making a request for some level of support. And so while I love the idea of placing direct correlation between one thing and yielding a result, sometimes that's not easy in student services. Sometimes that's not easy because you have multiple players and multiple things happening at the same time that contribute to that level of success. Again, just laying the groundwork and being fair. But and now I'm passing it to my colleague Jessica.
But with Element, we have a lot of AI features that do help our work, right? So, we started with the bot. I think that's where we led laid the groundwork with the bot, implementing that. And then we slowly added some agents. Well, they were assistants, right? And now we have agents. And so, with that, we do have some data there because that's been going on for 3 years now. We've had that in place, not the assistants, but the main Bolt bot. Ours is DT. But, we've saved over 60 days of human interactions just in a short span. That's not over the 3 years. I think that was the last year. We were able to turn on and off our after hour messaging and our weekends. We put in rules, right? So we turn on the weekend rules so that it's not trying to do a human handoff on the weekends when nobody's here, and same for in the evenings. But otherwise, the bot is able to answer questions after hours. We've saved over 750 hours of questions being answered by the bot just when we're not here and available. But that's also allowed us to figure out when students have these questions and figure out how to schedule appropriately in these areas, because the element shows you, your peak times of conversations and when conversations are happening like that. So it's able to identify those peak times that we can schedule accordingly. Let's not forget about health and wellness and the applications we saw with that. Last year, we saw a 10% increase on all the health and wellness programs. And hopefully we're tracking again this year. We're still processing applications for fall. So hopefully we see the same increase. But that was huge, right? And we've talked about this, how we've gone from paper to Element, and the time it has saved, the amount of consistency in the communications that we can do. Having one repository for all of this data. So anybody, the directors can come and look at the student profile and see, okay, the student was offered a seat in the program, or maybe they still need to attend an information session. So, you can go in and check and see what's kind of happening with that one student to see what they might need to complete their application. So those are some of our peaks of, where we are on data and the gains we've seen as we continue to roll out different areas of Element.
That's really interesting. It's so exciting.
Awesome.
One of the things that I love, and I put this right next to the data that you're able to get, but feedback from students. One of my favorite things to ever watch is like student panels and everything like that, because everything that you do from a higher ed perspective is going through the lens of how are we able to help and serve our students. So hearing that feedback from them, I'm interested to know, have you all gotten any student feedback from the changes that you've implemented from a support and success standpoint that you could share?
It's one of the facets of this work that becomes critically important, right? And in thinking of that question, what comes to mind for me is a student may not know that this is a system that's new because they're a new student and they're automatically involved and engaged with the utilization of the tool, right? I think the other piece of this is because we are now evolving in higher education to be more like other systems and how they're integrating CRMs and engaging, for instance, patients, right? When you go to the doctor's office and you're not able to check in and you're getting reminders that you have an appointment tomorrow, that's all the CRM moving that work, right? That's some type of integrated technology. And I think what's happening for us is we may not have a testimonial directly from a student say, oh my gosh, I love the fact that I'm able to now engage with you all through this platform, because they really don't know. What I can say is that we're getting the responses and we're yielding the results that we're hoping for when we're asking students to respond to a pulse check through the early success system, right? Success coaches are getting feedback from students about how they enjoy being able to text them and communicate with them via that platform. And so that, to me, those are specific areas where we are hearing from students, but not hearing them say, I love Element 451, hearing them say, I love the access and opportunity to use this tool to get what I need.
Yeah, hopefully they don't even know that you're using Element 451. I just more of like, how have you seen a shift in any positive feedback from exactly what you answered, right? Yeah. There's no way they would know that what tool you were using at all. I just am interested to hear their shift in kind of like how you're able to support them and if it went noticed or unnoticed. And clearly it's something that's been recognized.
I think too, being able to give that personal touch, just as simple as, although it may be automated for us, they don't realize it, and so having it say their name at the beginning of something, or, the logging into their portal to finish their application process, that's so personalized and tailored to them. And it's not one size fits all, which I think that probably from a student perspective, I would imagine is kind of giving that warm, welcoming feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. As you all are getting this feedback from students, from staff, what are some of the ways that you're using that feedback or that data to help you continuously improve on what you're doing with Element 451? Jessica, you mentioned 10% application increases. That's going to be tough to beat year after year after year. Like, what are you thinking about changing, or making better?
Well, I mean, we gradually made changes to the application as the year, this is what, year 2 now, we realized, okay, this verbiage wasn't very clear and we had a lot of questions around this, or this process wasn't the best, let's make some shifts. So we've already kind of made some process improvements along the way. And I think that's one of the perks of Element is you can, right? We can just go in and make these gradual shifts. I can make an adjustment to a campaign or to a student's enrollment portal, and they may not realize it, but we know that, okay, we've seen this disconnect, or we've seen this that needs to change. So I think that's one of the advantages that we can do that. We are constantly going, like we've mentioned, going to areas and figuring out process improvement and process efficiency. So I think that is where we are continuously improving. We're continuously bringing the college in to this system and utilizing it to improve their area. So I think that's something we will absolutely continue to do and figure out what else could move and shift into this.
If I can jump in, I think the other way that we're leveraging the tool is we're starting to get people interested in utilizing Element 451 in areas that we may not be familiar with. There may be some specific processes or activities that are happening in other departments and other divisions of the college when it comes to process improvements, right? And so they're now reaching out to us to say, reaching out to Jessica in particular to say, hey, this is what we have going on here. Can we sit down and talk about what this workflow is versus how Element could possibly assist us with this? So there's a peak of interest of now leveraging this tool in areas that typically would not have been part of this conversation. And what it's doing is it's creating a culture of collaboration at the college. We are now being more intentional about how we partner and how we work with our other divisions and departments to ensure that we are creating seamless processes for students. Our reality is that we serve such a diverse student population when it comes to college and career readiness, when it comes to continuing education, when it comes to continuing curriculum seeking students for a degree program or university transfer or some type of trade, right? How do we integrate all of those unique populations of students in one system? How do I take one student from one specific academic area? If I have a student who's completing a high school credential and we want to further their education because they've accomplished that, how can I transition that student now to a continuing education, short-term continuing education opportunity potentially? Or how do I now provide that student with the option of, here's some university transfer degrees if you want to pursue an associate's degree, or here's some trades if you want to pursue an associate of applied science degree. So it's forcing us to really be intentional about our own work. How do we improve what we do? And how do we ensure that the student is the focus of this and that their experience is one that is gratifying to them? That way we maintain their engagement. That way we maintain their commitment. That way they continue to persist and move onward. And the hope is that they will build enough capacity, gain enough from us that they're moving toward that long-term, short-term goal that they've established for themselves.
What's beautiful about what you just said, and this goes back to the second episode, and it also goes back to what you said earlier, whenever we said, hey, what data and analytics have you pulled on? You're like, well, we can't only attribute it to Element because we've been able to, the catalyst of all this has been, we've now have new departments and we've rethought this process and that process. What you have done as a team is you've opened the door to make change normal. And the tool that Element is what's allowing you to do that. But you'll never be able to solely attribute it to just the tool, right? Because now you've developed what did we say on the last episode? A culture of curiosity now of, whoa, if that's possible there, what's possible here? And now people are open to change, which we talked about on the last episode, is a rare thing to achieve at an institution. Daniella can tell you, she works with schools day in and day out that resist change like no other. But if you can develop that as a culture to be curious and to be open to change, the possibilities are endless. And I think that's what you guys are seeing now. And it's not something that's easy, or it's not something that's quick, but it's something whenever you have the possibility there and people open to it, you can do anything.
It's so true. It's so true. Speaking of change, what's next for all y'all? What's coming down the pipeline? What's going to change next?
Oh my gosh, we have so much ahead of us, right? I mean, we are getting our integration almost completely finalized. We have a few more things that we're trying to work out. We are the health and wellness applications in. We're getting ready to add a continuing education program to that application. We have paramedic in as their own application. We will continue to integrate forms, events. I mean, we have over 80 events already published. So the college is pretty on board with the events, and we'll continue to utilize that. We see great return with events. I don't know if we highlighted our open house. We had open house in Element, right? And we decided, let's just send out this mass communication to all the prospects. And we went from 70 registered to over 500 registered.
Whoa, Jessica. Yeah. Wow.
Highest turnout we've ever had at an open house event. We were not even ready. They were at the doors before we were even fully set up, ready to come and check in. So we're like, okay, we need to be more prepared next year. So yeah, we will continue to utilize Element, and you guys keep kind of, expanding appointments. You guys just implemented some changes with that. We will be 100% looking into those changes to see how we can utilize appointments more. I mean, it's endless.
I think it's important to lift that message up that Jessica just mentioned, right? Because I think what I've appreciated and continue to look forward to is anytime we're being creative and innovative in our approach on what we're trying to improve upon and enhance, we always are able to come to you and say, hey, this is kind of what we need. And I don't think there's been one instance, in my opinion, where anyone has said, no, we can't do that, Abe. It's, let us think about that. Let me go to the engineers and let me talk to the developers to see if this is possible. And the appointments is one big piece of that. We have so many different ways right now to schedule an appointment with an employee at the college. Unfortunately, if I'm a student and I'm meeting with Daniella and trying to connect with Daniella has one way of me setting up a meeting. Then I now need to meet with Jessica, and it's a whole different way. Well, guess what? You just caused me to have to either create a new account somewhere, or you caused me now to learn and navigate a different system, right? So it's not making sense. It's not cohesive. It's not keeping the student centered and their experiences and how they're engaging with us. So when I think of the question you just asked, you all position yourselves to really promote and allow us to engineer solutions that really focus on the experience of the student. And I think at the end of the day, that's why this tool becomes extremely important. That's why our work becomes vital. That's why we're seeing and yielding some of the results that we have shared out. It's because we're really being intentional about how do we provide support services and engage with students that gives them what they need when they need it. Dallas Herring, the founder of the North Carolina Community College System, says, we want to take a student from where they are to as far as they can go. I think Element does the same thing, taking a student where they are and as far as they can go on this journey called higher education.
I love that. That's beautiful. Friends, we've reached the end of the journey. We've reached the end of our 3-part episode, only to come to the end. And we know when Jessica's in her element, we know when Abe's in his element. The question now, everyone's waiting. How are they going to do this? There's only 2 people, but there's 3 episodes. So we'll have both of you give your take on when Durham Tech is in their element. Jess, you first.
When we're serving students, we're, constantly serving students in different capacities. And, this tool allows us to serve students even better and more efficiently, more personalized. We talked about that. And so I think this just improves our student interactions and our student engagement and our service to them.
Awesome. Abe?
We have to suggest that Durham Tech is in its element when we have researched and explored every opportunity to leverage Element 451 to improve and enhance a process and a service that is provided to a student.
That was a mic drop moment. Yeah.
I was just saying, I don't think we can add anything else to that.
We're just going to let that.
See everyone on the next episode.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Those were both great answers. Sorry, Jessica, that was a great answer too. But Dr. Dones had time to think about his while you were talking.
I'd say a little bit of an unfair advantage. He had a solid 1 to 2 minutes to think through.
Yeah.
So
This has been awesome, though, guys. Thank you so much. I know 3 episodes was a lot to ask, but we had to have 3 episodes to get through all the good work that y'all have been doing. So I am so grateful for you for coming on. I think everybody's going to be really grateful to hear some of the tips and some of the tricks and things that you've implemented in Element. So thank you both.
Absolutely. And I mean, one more time for the good of the series, because we've said it on the other 2. Go birds. That's right. Just knew what was coming. Go birds.
We got some feedback on that on LinkedIn. Some people were not happy.
It was just Doug. Doug works with us, so we're not worried about that.
We'll convert him. Him. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
In Your Element is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too.
Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and enrollment professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Artis Kadu, Maya Demishkovich, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.